We love our coffee. It fuels people in the world every single morning to start their day. Coffee unites us all. It awakens the world. Could you go a day without coffee? A month? What about a lifetime? In the equatorial regions of the world, coffee, other crops, and people are facing challenges that are changing the world as we know it.
Coffee flowers and then goes in through the harvesting cycle, the fruiting cycle, based off of a sudden change between a dry season and a wet season. When you have a fluctuation of your weather patterns, that's not there anymore. So where you used to have pretty reliable harvest patterns, now you don't. Things are unpredictable now. It's unpredictable when the rains will come and when they'll stop. Every farmer that we speak to across East Africa is aware of it, and they refer to global warming in their daily conversations.
I want to get a coffee from this flower. This flower, no raining, no flower, is very dangerous for me.
Mount Kilimajaro is the tallest point on the continent of Africa. Climate change is affecting growing seasons, product reliability, and the types of coffee that can be grown in the region. No predictable rain, no coffee.
This is the climate change. Our agriculture is rain-fed. We don't have irrigation systems here for lack of investment. So the area used to depend on enough rainfall, which used to have 2 seasons, coming in October, November to January. And then we had the main rain season, which was from March to May, June. For the last 5 years, we don't see the short rains anymore. Most cases, what we see is only single rainfall season pattern. And that is making a lot of effect to the vegetation, affecting even the coffee production. Because the first rains used to support flowering of the coffee and the formation of berries. Production has gone down from an average of 20,000 tons in the 80s to 90. Today, we are seeing coffee in the north of Tanzania between 6,000 to 8,000 tons, which is less than half of what used to be.
There is very close relationship between climate change effect, the life reality, and deforestation. No enough rain, villagers, farmers go to be reliant on the forests. This is forest depletion. You find a lot of villagers going to the forest, to the bush, to cut down trees, to make charcoal. They sell in the towns, nearby towns, to get some money to buy food. The government is trying to work out to avoid this, but it has never been possible because unless there are new mechanisms for survival of these people by the government, then people cannot go to the forest. But the government is not yet adequate to support these local people for other income generation activities.
This is Adimu. At 78 years old, she spends her days chopping stones, earning $1 for every bucket she sells on the side of the road in rural Tanzania. Every morning she walks from her nearby village and spends her days smashing rocks with a handmade hammer.
Kama ipi ni kulima, kama sasa hivi tumelima, tumeshavuna. Sasa kazi ingine ni.
Adimu and her husband used to be farmers, but in recent years, they could no longer predict rains for their coffee, corn, or crops. Facing starvation and no income in their elderly years, they have been forced to do this backbreaking work to survive.
Ni ngumu we. Sasa baba, hata kama ni ngumu, huna kazi ingine ya kufanya, utafanyaje?
She says, this is hard work, but she has no other option.
Kwa hiyo mvua ikinyesha inazama huko kote. Zama hivi. Basi. Inazama huko.
Shida iliyopo ni maji.
The rains used to come early September to December. Those were the good years. Today, things have changed. Rain only comes once in October and once in November. That's the end of it. Therefore, Most of the crops we used to grow are no longer in existence. The place is dry. Water springs have dried out. Flowing rivers are no longer existing, and villagers are suffering, especially the women, walking 20 kilometers, collecting 20 liters of water every day.
So there's a big change. Now we are having more water use conflicts because everyone wants to get water for irrigating his or her crops. I had a chance to see one fellow whose ear was cut because they were fighting for water. So if your ear is cut fighting for water, you can, even your life can be lost.
People are hungry for access to water. Farmers and the Maasai have been in constant conflict over water resources. The Maasai are semi-nomadic animal herders and believe farmers have been disrupting their grazing lands and water. Farmers are facing destruction of their crops by Maasai grazing. Both livelihoods are the only thing sustaining their families, and therefore violence can ensue. In 2015, Fatuma and her late husband built a life farming next to the river Ruvu in order to cultivate food for their family. They moved closer to water because they could no longer predict rains in their old village far from any river. One afternoon, they had just finished seeding the onions and started walking home. Suddenly, a gang of Maasai engulfed them, and they started to beat her husband. They shed their spears and clubs. They slapped him and hit him with their spears, clubs, and bush knives. They beat him and kicked him until suddenly he fell and died. Now, with her husband gone, she can barely keep her family going on her own. All the money they had saved was spent on that farm, and now they have nothing to survive. Nothing. The Maasai have also suffered losses due to conflicts over water. Donkeys are the key to Maasai life. They carry everything long distances. One day, Maasai donkeys were seen loitering around a farmer's field and water trough. A gang of men and youth came, found the donkeys without the owner. That is when they cut and killed 20 of them. The farmers were angry. Donkeys had taken water they needed to grow their own food. These extreme examples illustrate the growing conflict over dwindling resources that will only keep increasing as climate change accelerates.
Water is life. No water, no living. If we leave this to go on as it is going now, it will come a time when we shall have no water at all. The big contributors to the climate change is not the least developed countries, but the more developed countries like the USA, China, India, Europe. Those people are the ones who are making this thing to become worse.
I think in developed countries like Europe, America, and many other, the contribution could be industrial activities. So the ozone layer is no longer virgin. And geographically, we experience a lot of changes because the air in the sky is also destroyed. Probably this is contributing to a big part of climate change.
If politicians are not going to buy our ideas, I don't think we are going to end anywhere.
You know what this is? It's a snowball, and that's just from outside here. So it's very, very cold out, very unseasonal. So here, Mr. President, catch this.
So if that is happening in the US, you can imagine how that is happening in Africa. Because we are taking US as a mirror so that we can copy. But if that's not happening there, what do you think in Africa can happen?
Smog looks like in Beijing.
More than 200,000 acres.
Right up until landfall, a lot of...
What's happened to Lake Urumie?
Island communities.
I think we have to think twice on how to combat this. We have to be very strict on people who are degrading our environment. It's a catastrophe.
Pius and others are trying to survive, and they are taking matters into their own hands. There is no time to waste. At this school, Pius's organization, Kyllea, works with students to combat climate change.
We formed an environmental club within the secondary school so that they can be aware of what is going on. Sometimes it's not so much friendly. When we make these people to understand what is going on, what you can do is to plant a lot of trees, and we teach them the ethics of tree nursery establishment, how to plant the trees. Then I think they will go all over the country. Therefore, they will be preaching that if you plant a tree, then you reduce the hazards of environmental change.
Kateri at Kyllea educates people about sustainable farming and income generation.
Kilimanjaro and the Summit District is part of my heart. It's part of my feelings. I have a big touch with the environment because it is from the environment that we grow plants, to grow food, to get food for animals, for people. And we also get water from the tangible source we see and touch. So when we see it losing its value, I feel like it's part of my responsibility to help rescuing the situation. My mission is to work with people and for the people to conserve and protect every drop of water for the sustainable community development projects. We address the issues of environmental conservation, water catchment conservation and protection to try to see the effort and input they can put to rescue the environment and secure their future. And here he continues adding manure and water. We have done training and capacity building on runoff water management for productive use in the garden, dry season gardening, and also construction. We have done construction of what we call traditional irrigation ponds, where people conserve water in the hole, and during dry season, they use it for growing the vegetable and other crops.
They have to care for the environment because it is going to care them in future. If there will be a political will to deal with the environment, to deal with the water resources, that will give a bright future.
Their efforts are great, but it can't just be Tanzanians trying to plant trees and hope for survival. We are all responsible, and we all want to survive in a world worth living in. We have to change today and together.